Hello ladies and gents, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you for your continued support and I hope you learned something today. I have been printing a lot of Pokemon lately, and yes, it's true, I'm doing it because you seem to like them, and also because I really enjoy printing and painting them. You can go to Cults 3D, my mini factory, and download thousands of minis. You can also join many Patreons for some awesome models, but I think I have something that may interest you. I will teach you how to create your own minis using Nomad Sculpt so that you can print and paint your own minis. If that sounds good to you, please stay tuned, and I promise by the end of the video, you will have a better understanding of Nomad Sculpt. In my last video, I gave a quick overview of 3D modeling softwares, and I think this is a perfect follow-up to go a bit deeper into sculpting in Nomad Sculpt. If you have not watched my last video, I recommend you do. But if you didn't, you can still follow along with this video and get a lot out of it. When I work on my models, the first thing I want to tackle is the head. I know I should block out the rest of the model first, but I really get turned off if the likeness is not there. So I try to nail it or get as close to it as my patience allows me to. Let's get into this. I use the move tool to block out the shape of his head and the mask tool to draw out the features. I then inverse the mask tool and use the move tool to press the features like the mouth and the eye sockets into the head. One thing that got me in the beginning when using Nomad was I got stuck in the mask tool. And to unmask, you need to click back into the mask tool and click on the context menu above, then click unmask. The trick to blocking out the features is to use the move tool to shape your geometry and the clay tool to do incremental changes. Always change the brush size and try to slowly go over the model and experiment to make sure it is as precise as you want it to be. The other important tool is the smooth tool, which helps smooth out the clay tool and gives a smoother geometry. Going back and forth between the clay tool and the smooth tool until you get what you want your model to look like. You don't even have to move away from the clay tool, as any tool can become the smooth tool by clicking the smooth tool button on the sidebar. I really don't know what the relax tool button does, but I always click it off when smoothing. If anyone knows what it is or what it does, please post it in the comments below. If you two-finger click on the canvas, you will undo. Undo is your best friend. Don't be afraid to undo your mistakes. Nomad has a 100-step undo history, so you can go back plenty, so don't be afraid to use it. Here I add a sphere for the eyes, and instead of duplicating the sphere, I use the mirror tool, which can be added from the same menu you add geometry into the canvas. I parent that to the sphere so that I can edit one and the changes transfer to the other instance sphere. I do the same with the ear. I add a sphere and use the move tool to mold it into shape and then mirror it. I then select the ears and head and voxel remesh them to join them and use the smooth tool to get rid of the seam between the head and the ears. Essentially, these are now one object. Remember, you can always undo all these changes, even the merging of the objects. I am not sure why I decided to model the nostrils, because at this scale you cannot see it, but it is good practice for when you decide to print at a larger scale. Okay, here's where I add the body. I first add a sphere and scale it to size and use the move tool to mold it into shape. The move tool can be as precise as you want it to be. You can gradually change the size and get very different results. To get these really large changes, I recommend you make the tool size as big as you can and gradually make it smaller until you get the desired result. I then do the same for the front legs. I add a sphere, shape it into place and mirror it, always checking my references. I then use the trim tool to make the legs or feet flat so that they sit flush to the base once it is printed. I then duplicate the front legs to make the hind legs and modify them as needed. I then merge the body and the head by selecting them both and using voxel remesh. I then try to smooth all the seams and use the move tool to mold it into a shape that resembles the reference. I add a sphere to make the tongue, making sure symmetry is on. Sometimes symmetry can be finicky, so play around with the settings until you get the desired result. I then add cones for his fangs and mirror them. Remember what I said in my last video, break the model down to its fundamental geometrical shapes and you will be able to model anything. I then also use cones for the nails. I only created 3 cones, but by duplicating and mirroring them, I was able to make the other 9 nails. I voxel remeshed the legs in order to give them more detail, and then I merged them with the body and clean up the seams with a combination of the clay tool and smooth tool. And now the body is complete. I then realized I made an oopsie and the eyes are further apart than I made it, so I go back and modify the face using the references. The clay and smooth tools in combination are your friends. Honestly, you probably only need 3 tools: clay, smooth, and move. Here's where I use the mask tool to extract the details of the eye. The trick is to have enough resolution using voxel remesh so that the mask is smooth and the extracted geometry is smooth. Okay, it's time to create the bulb on his back. I add a sphere and use symmetry on the X and Z axis to make a shape that is mirrored in 4 sides. Again, using the move tool to mold it into shape. I then use the clay tool in sub mode to make the grooves in the bulb. Now is a good time to step back and admire your work and how far you've come. Every mini needs a base, and this is no different. Let's add a cylinder and scale it to fit our needs, add a taper to the top, and it is almost done. Just need to add a few details. Now is the time to clean up the Bulbasaur model. Let's add some defining details on Bulbasaur and some of our own using our artistic liberty. We need to use the mask tool to draw the defining shapes that give Bulbasaur his spots. If for some reason you are trying to draw a mask and it is coming out jaggy, you may need to raise the resolution of the model. Be careful when raising the resolution, as this will make it more difficult to shape the model further. But since we are confident this is the final shape, we will go ahead and raise it. I then try to smooth out the shapes, but nothing is happening, and that's because of the dreaded relax tool. I know it has a purpose, but I never use it and it comes out by default. Okay, let's make some flowers. I have to admit, even I don't know everything there is to know about Nomad. When I started to make the petals, I was going about it all wrong by duplicating them. I took one step back and went onto YouTube and found the radio array tool. I highly recommend if you're having issues, you search for an answer on YouTube, and I guarantee you will find a solution. I used the radio array to add 8 petals using flattened spheres. Then it's as easy as adding the center of the flower and the stem. For the stem, I used a cylinder and tapered it. Now, I will duplicate the flowers and use them to decorate his body and the base. I then created mushrooms with cylinders to put on the base for some variation. Now, I usually print and paint my models, but for this video, I will just paint them in Nomad and show you the final result. In the next video, I will print this model in SLA or resin, NFDM or filament to compare the 2 models, so stay tuned. And with that, we're done. Enjoy this small montage. Happy 3D modeling. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you're a continued subscriber, thank you for your continued support. If this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. Please take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Peace.